Today is just a quick conversation about graphics card and gaming machines. Now, in particular, I have got three PCs now. I'm lucky to have three PCs. I've got a really compact one here, which has got the 27X AMD processor with the 2060 graphics card, which is basically, you can see in the picture here. Now, the thing is, what do you actually need to have a gaming PC? Now you'll see a lot of, and also I've got here is 3070 Founders Edition PC. That's got the Ryzen 5800X processor with the tough motherboard. You would see that on my video as well of how I built that one. And I've got another machine, my main machine that I use for mainly for gaming. Now, question that you might be asking in general is, what do you actually need to have a gaming machine? To be honest with you, you'll see a lot of YouTubers showing off their latest tech, as in the most up-to-date graphics card with the up-to-date processors. I think it's completely unnecessary. And you'll see others as well where they give you the budget they can do it. Now, if you've got the money, of course, you go ahead and do whatever you want to do with your money. But from what in my experience, after having three different types of graphics card, for example, right now I've got the 3080 Ti, which looks a bit like that one. The one that's in the machine that I'm using right now for office work is basically 3070. What I will say is, what you really need to look forward to, what you need to really consider is the budget. You've got to make sure you've got the right budget and you stick to your budget and spend a bit more on the graphics card than what it is. And also, if you want to get a good experience, you will need a good monitor. So it does add up. I've calculated, looking at on the internet, it will set you back, just the machine itself, about £800 for a very decent machine. Now, I think that's a bit of a false economy here, because you could actually get yourself a standard machine that will run, just get yourself a good enough graphics card, even 3060, or if you can afford it, or even 2060, doesn't matter, as long as you put the resolution slightly down on the, and also you need a good monitor as well. So there's a lot of factors that you need to consider. Now, I'm just going to go through a few of them right now and show you what's available out there and how much you can really save. The way I say is, there are three options you have. You can buy, like I normally use CCL just to get a price point of how much things will cost. Now you'll see straight away on there, I've chosen the Ryzen 5 5600G, which has got the graphics card, of course, and a very good motherboard, which will set you back about £136. And you can basically carry on from there. Kingston, 16 gig, power supply 600 watt, 1 terabyte is probably minimum nowadays with a case. And that will set you back about 450 quid. Now, that's one option, but that's actually also means that you don't have a graphics card to use. You're going to be using the graphics card that's built into the processor, which is not always ideal. And you'll see this from all the YouTubers, it's not the best quality you get. You need a dedicated graphics card. Now, if you can afford £450, you can get something like this and have it built by yourself. And also, if you can spend another, now next option would be to look for a graphics card. Now, second-hand graphics card is the best way to go, I recommend. And you can probably get 1660 with the best to go for, just to get a bare basic starting sort of startup PC. Therefore, that will be used for gaming. And you can go up from there. It's literally, if you can go for RTX models, which you can do, but I tend to stick to Ryzen. I tend to stick to NVIDIA over Ryzen stuff or AMD stuff. So AMD, I think the best one you can get for a good price would be similar to 3060. It will be, I think it is 6600 maybe. I'm not that familiar with AMD because I don't really use it much. But what I would say is, keeping to your budget is very important. So if you want to buy something new, you can go for a list here, as you can see, and that will be £500. And on top of that, you need to get a graphics card. Now, you can pick up a graphics card for about £200, very basic 3050. You can probably just about get one of those second hand, and that will do the job. The second option would be to get a second-hand machine, which will set you back probably about 300 quid, depending on how old it is and what sort of spec it comes in. And that's another reliability issue that you might find, which I don't really recommend all the time. But at the same time, you'll probably come with a graphics card and you can probably use that as normal. but it does also mean that, you know, it's already been used. You don't know how long it's going to last. There might be issues, but it might not. It depends on how well you know your system. Now, if you can get one built, which is brilliant, you can get the parts and you get a build, or you can get a ready built one, which will set you back a bit more, but it'll cost you a lot more on the build itself. So my advice is basically going for a good graphics card, as you can see on here. Good motherboard, as you can see on here, which will set you back. I mean, that's a starting point, but a lot of stuff will be connecting to that. And this motherboard was amazing, I must say. And get yourself a fast enough processor, which is not always important, unless depending on what you're doing. But if you're just considering gaming, enough RAM to run. I mean, you can do with 8 gigs, but 16 gigs is more recommended. 600 watt of power supply is more than sufficient. And here is quite important actually as well. You're getting 1 terabyte Gen 4, which will be quite fast, and a good enough case to put everything together. And then I'll recommend looking for a second-hand graphics card. Now I'll give you a few options of the graphics card now as well. Now looking at CCL computers here as well, where I normally look at it, what you don't want to do is go for the most cheapest, because that won't do any good to you. And 2 gig is never that good to run games on, and I would never recommend it. Going down further, it's still not good enough yet. I mean, this is something you could use. 4 gig, 1630 will be sufficient if you put everything into low setting. Now you want something decent, so I recommend just putting the memory to about 6 and see what comes up. Now this is where it starts getting interesting. So if you put 6, you've got 3050 8 gig, but it doesn't do 6 gig. I think CCL doesn't do the older model. So let's come out of this website and look for another one where we can get the right sort of prices. So in Scan Computers, shop online, you get an option to choose your memory size. So I would say 6 gig, 8 gig, 10, 11, 12. And I would like to go with NVIDIA series. So let's see if it gives you a choice up here. I can't see it. But either way, let's have a look to what's the cheapest you can get. So if we put them to low to high, now we're talking. So basically, this is, I think, more than sufficient. 1660 Super, 6 gig RAM, DDR6, which is perfectly fine, and it's £233. Now you've got to consider, wait a minute, I'm getting Super, but for a bit more, you can get 2060 12 gig. So I strongly recommend that straight away, if you can get something like that. And then going forward as well, you've got 3050, which are very similar, but I prefer the 2060 12 gig over the 3050, as you'll see there. But the price wise is very similar. Now next one up from there is basically 2060 again, 6 gig, but it's got the 1 fan. I rather prefer to have the 2 fans, because 2 fans are easier, it cools better, it doesn't overheat, so I'll recommend that. And if you've got a bit more, about £250, I wouldn't still recommend going for this, because you've got the 2060 available. So if I go lower down again, 3050, they're all 3050s, 3050s, and there you go, they're all 1660, 3050, until you hit the mark of, there you go, 300 quid. So if you're looking for 3060, you're going to be paying at least 300 over. So that's one option of buying new. So you really got to shop around for it. So again, look at the CCL computers here. The cheapest they have with the 6 gig and above RAM, you're looking at the Radeon version, so AMD, which is brilliant. I think it's a good deal there. 250 quid, 286, and then it goes from there. 3060 is 319, but that's still 1 fan. I think they tend to heat up a bit more. So I'd rather you go for something with their dual fans, which as you can see here, which is much better, which is 325. So spending a bit more, a few quid more to get something from this to this, I think is a lot more worth it than you'd think. So anyway, but the next thing you've got to consider is, can you get something like this in second hand? And I would say I picked up my 3080 Ti brand new in a box unopened for just under £600. Is it worth that much money? Now we're going to talk about my system itself to give you a rough idea of how you could save money and not fall for the trap that I fell for a while now, I must say. So initially, one of the machine I had this graphics card, which is fine, 2060, it does the job. Then I also had my main machine had the 3070 right here, and then goes into, now I've got the 3080. And what do I see the difference? In my main computer with 165 Hertz, I don't see any difference at all whatsoever. The gaming still can be played on all of them relatively well, and that's it, it's fine. So if you're trying to improve on gaming quality and the refresh rate and stuff like that, I recommend sticking to 2060 or even 1660 Super or TI or anything like that is fine. You'll do the job. But if you want ray tracing, you have to go with the RTX, of course. Now, moving on from that is what I've noticed the difference is that yes, 3080 that I've got, my new 3080 is beautiful machine. It looks beautiful. So I went with the static then performance itself. I mean, it will do a lot more than others do, but how much do you actually need on a gaming that you normally play, like Modern Warfare and any other game that you play? I normally play Gears of War, which is a lot of graphic. It does use a lot of graphics on there, and it runs very hot because of that. And I seem to have noticed that even with the 3070 to 3080 and even 2060, they seem to be running fairly well, and the temperature always high in that game. Now, I haven't got the benchmark for any of those, but I can tell you from my own experience, I could have just stuck with this on my main machine. It would have done the job beautifully fine. So for you, if you're looking for a budget machine, I recommend first looking for a second hand to see if you can get a cheap machine that you can upgrade. Second of all, just like I've shown you on the screen earlier on, that you can get something for £450 and just apply a bit more money just to get yourself an RTX, maybe 2060 or so on. The problem that you'll find is after getting all those, when you run the machine on a normal TV, which is probably about 60 Hertz, you're not going to get a good refresh rate at all. So let's talk about what else do you need. So you're going to need a nice monitor. So I've got the monitor here just to show you here. Now this one runs at 165 Hertz and it does really well. It's a small monitor we use for gaming in the playroom, we call it, and that does job really well. So that's another expense you could think about. They'll set you back about secondhand £100 for a good monitor for 1 to 4, I think, Hertz, which will do the job perfectly fine. So straight away you've noticed from £450 your machine just went to £550 plus another £200 on graphics card or more, £250 let's say. So you're paying arm and a leg already for it. Now how can you save money is what I'm trying to tell you is I recommend get yourself a cheap machine that just works perfectly fine and spend a bit more money on a graphics card and a monitor. And that will give you the better budget, and also you'll be within your budget if you're looking for a budget machine, and it will basically give you better performance for money, and monitor will be very helpful, of course. And the last thing you really got to consider is your internet itself. Now I've noticed playing with a lot of people, depending on where you're in the country, your internet might not be as good. And that makes a big difference when you're competitive, on a competitive gaming. So you've got to consider that as well. But if you've got fair enough, good enough internet now, as most people do, you just got to get yourself a nice enough monitor. 24-inch is more than sufficient. 1 to 4 Hertz is perfectly fine. Secondhand £100. Probably if you want to get a brand new, maximum £150. So let's add it all up and see how much it comes to now. So looking at my list again, going with Ryzen, of course, and sometimes what I've noticed is that Intel is cheaper on the Intel is cheaper on the motherboard, but can be quite expensive on the CPU, depending on where you get the deals from. But this is costing me £128, and it's a Ryzen 5 5600 is probably good enough as well. There's plenty of power there for your gaming, and the motherboard is what I think is very important that you need to go for, which will look nicer, as well as you can always upgrade later on. That's another thing you got to consider. But in tech, do fall short of when the time comes, you'll be out of date. So it's good to always have the leeway to upgrade when you can. Power supply is always important, of course. So these are the major items that you're going to need. So I'm just going to go through the list here for you so you can see it, and that is £450. So you're going to add another £100 second-hand monitor, maybe if you want to go for. That's £550, and £250 for graphics card is more than sufficient. So that's what I say. If you want to build a good enough machine, this is what you need to look for. And let's just show you what monitors you can get for about £150. Now I just did a Google search for 124 Hertz monitor. And what am I getting with this? I'm getting a lot of stuff from Alibaba, AliExpress and stuff. Avoid those, of course. I mean, the best thing to do is to get it from a reputable dealer. So, for example, Currys or any computer shops you see, like eBuyer is doing it for 27 here, open. That's 165 hertz, 27 inch. That is brilliant, actually. That's a very good price. Now, let's have a look at this carefully. I think that's the similar sort of monitor I've already have, actually, which is very good. And you're looking at basically at £112 here. You go to eBuyer. Let's go inside and have a look to see what it looks like. So now, this is a very good monitor. I mean, you can go through all the reviews you want, and you can see all the YouTubers showing off with their up-to-date tech. But to be honest, you just need something that works fast and does the job. Now, according to this, it's supposed to be 165 hertz, but it doesn't look like it is. That's another thing that you'll notice straight away. It says 75 hertz, 1 millisecond response time. So you've got to know what you're buying, because this is not what it says on Google. So let's have a look to see if it is. Nope, it is not. So you'll fall for those traps. It shows on the ad that it's a lot more than what it is. So let's go back and find something that is. eBay, even the second hand is where you get the, if you want to get it from eBay, you can get second hand ones. You do want something that works, something that's a bit more reliable. AOC, that's a good brand, 24 inch. That's eBuyer, that's used according to the eBuyer. Let's just scroll through this quickly. Love Alibaba. I wish I could just cancel the Alibaba one or AliExpress ones and show you exactly what you can get. So you're looking at £150, I think my budget is to get a monitor for a good price. This looks interesting. Amazon LC, never heard of the brand. 165 hertz. I mean, we could look at that, that's no problem. Never heard of it. I mean, something like this will do the job. I recommend with Amazon. It's a good thing is, if anything goes wrong, if it's directly from Amazon, you can always get it, replaced or get an exchange. That's no problem. So it's a 1080p, 165 hertz, 24 inch. It's more than capable of gaming. But I'm sure you can get something a bit cheaper, a bit more brand as well, and that will do the job perfectly fine. I mean, AOC is usually quite cheap. MSI will be a bit more expensive, but I'm sure you can find one, so that's not a problem. So they're the options that you've got right now. Here's a surprise one I've noticed. Samsung, 27 inches says on here. Let's go into it and see what it looks like. Is it true? They're doing a deal on this 27 inch, it's 165 hertz, and I just can't believe they're selling this for £150, 165 hertz. That is a good deal. So as you can see straight away, you can get a deal, and 27 is probably the best size for gaming. 32 is be excessive, but 27 will do the job. Now I'm just showing this on the screen because I just thought of it, because a lot of people are inquiring that how to get a good gaming machine for their children and stuff. I just recommend, if you can buy one outright for a good price at a good graphics card, and options are graphics card is the important bit, and the rest of it basically is what you can afford. But it does leave you short for a monitor, which is very important too, because people do tend to forget. They just think they can just play on the TV and it will do the job, depending on your TV, of course. Now, if you're really working on a shoestring budget, as I said, you need to go for secondhand everything, and that will save you money. But if you want to go for something that's decent and you can make it yourself, you're capable. It's good experience as well to make it with the children if you know a bit more, and just get yourself Windows key at the end, and then you've got yourself a gaming machine and you can play whatever you want on it, and the graphics card will be £250 minimum I would recommend spending on it. Do not look at those YouTubers with their 4090s and all that. Even I've got the 3080 Ti's. It's irrelevant. I'm just looking for the aesthetic. That's the only reason I got it, because I like it. But if you're into that, that's your choice at the end of the day to spend that money. But as I said, with a shoestring budget, you need to save money wherever you can. I recommend, so these are the 3 things I recommend. First of all, decent enough machine with enough RAM to run games, but spend the money on the graphics card, and minimum you should spend is about £250 for either 2060 or 3060 or 3050 is your last choice. More RAM, the better. Okay, that's the advice I can give you. The second part is decent enough screen to play it on. and I recommend spending a bit of money on that as well. If you're standalone monitors, if you need for your kids, £150 should be more than sufficient. As I showed you already, the Samsung brand, you can't go wrong with this. 27-inch does the job beautifully. I mean, if you go for the 32, let's have a look how much that is. That is £189. Now, the price of these have gone down a lot recently, I've noticed. So you've got a good chance of getting a good machine with a good monitor. And the last of all, get yourself a decent internet, and your kids will be laughing and loving it. As I said, to build it yourself might be difficult, so ready-made build will be a bit more pricey. But if you, as I said, if you're in a really small budget, this is the way to get the best performance for money that you have. And that's the advice I can give you. As I said, from the experience that I've had, just to let you know, with the 3 different graphics card, I think sticking to a budget is probably the best option. And you know, as I said, a lot of people show you most fancy machines out there, but it's not necessary for just light gaming unless you're a pro player. And later on, if they can become a pro player, you can buy they have enough money to buy their own machines to play pro. So I hope you understood what I said, and I hope you take into account what I said. And if you need more help and guidance, yes, of course, do question it. But for my experience, in a shoestring budget, just stick to your budget and get yourself some decent technologies such as the monitor, graphics card, and decent enough machine to run it. And that's all you need to get your gaming going, even in a good quality gaming with a good refresh rate and stuff. So there you go. So thank you very much for watching, and hopefully that gives you clarifies a few things, and hope to speak to you guys again soon.